Hello, my name is Jeffrey Watson,
And I'm Ethan Edwards.
and this is the Ridge Podcast.
Well, hello, everyone. Today we have a very exciting guest on, Mr. Kevin Kemp. He's a sheriff of Carroll County. Mr. Kemp, how are you?
I'm doing well. How about you guys?
I'm doing good.
Good.
I think I can speak for both me and Ethan. We're real excited to have you on today.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a pleasure for me to be here. I'm honored to do it, and thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for coming.
Anytime. So I think with most interviews, we want to start from the beginning. So tell us about your early childhood, where you grew up.
Oh, early childhood. I was born here in Carroll County. That's his home. Lived here my whole life. My parents still are living, and both of them still reside out of where I was raised in our home, over in between Duxboro and Laurel Fork section of Carroll County, over next to Buffalo Mountain Church in the Carroll County section there. And then went to school at Meyer Fork Christian Academy my whole life. So I never went to a public school my entire life. So I went to a Christian school, and my parents owned and operated a restaurant in Hillsville for 20 years of my life. Called the Corner Restaurant, which is now closed and is now Recreate Church there at the stoplight.
Yeah.
Yes, they own that.
So this school you went to, where was it located?
Is in Willis, right off of 221, not far out of Carroll County, but just off to the right there. As you go into Carroll, you go probably just about 3 miles, 2 miles, something like that.
And that was from like
K through 12.
K through 12.
Yes.
Is it still operating today?
No, it is not. It got sold. They went out of, I guess, service, so to speak. It was conducted by the pastor of Meyer Fork Christian Academy at the time, called Meyer Fork Baptist Church, is what I should say. That's the pastor of that church, and then he started Meyer Fork Christian Academy in the basement. Then they built a building, and so I started at kindergarten and went through my whole school career till I graduated in 1994.
Did you play any sports in high school?
No, my school was so small there wasn't, but K through 12 there wasn't but about 40 children there. So when I graduated in 94, I was the class of 1994. I didn't graduate with anybody else.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
So what did instruction look like at a school that small?
Well, it wasn't like you guys do school. I sat at a desk by myself with petitions on my sides. You had about 5th grade through 12th grade in one big room, and you kind of done your own work at your own pace. So you didn't have normal class changes. You just done subjects based in books, and that's the way it operated. I sit at one desk all day long every day.
Did you enjoy that?
Well, I did, because it's the only way that I knew life operated for me at that time. I didn't know another way. So, it's whatever you're used to.
That's true.
So in a structure like that, I guess self-motivated students really succeed.
It taught me to be self-learning. It taught me to have self-discipline, because no one stood in front of you and taught. You had to read the instructions in a book. It would give examples. You had to learn how to do the work based on instructions you were reading. And if you had struggles with anything, you would also, ask for help from a teacher, but you would have to do it a certain way. You couldn't just throw your hand up. You had to put a marker up on top of your desk, and they would know that you need help based on that certain marker, and they would come ask you, and they would help you with that situation, and then they would move on. They didn't stay with you and try to, once they got you through that, you had to continue to try to do it yourself. And testing was a little different. Anything below an 85, you failed the test.
Really? Wow.
Yes.
So
And if you failed it, you had to do the whole book all over again. They would erase it all completely out, and you had to start it from the very beginning and do the whole book
And you
over
only get
again.
one chance to do
That
the
is
test.
correct.
Oh, wow.
high standards then.
It was high standards. It was very beneficial to me. As I've gotten older, I realized that it probably made me better than I realized in regards to trying to do things. Didn't understand it then, but now at my age, I think it was beneficial in a lot of areas that, wouldn't been seen then.
So did you have any contact really with kids in Carroll County?
Oh yes, that's the great thing about my parents owning a restaurant. I would go there during the day, 8:30 in the mornings when class would start. 3 o'clock school was over. My parents would pick me up and then take me back to the restaurant where they were already there during the day. They'd come pick me up and go back to the restaurant, and then I would work in the restaurant, and I got home to work. And then after I got my homework done, I would either help with cleaning tables in the restaurant or washing dishes, and then when I got old enough, I started to help cook. But I also had a lot of friends that I made in Hillsville, in the area. So I would, when I was younger, I would go do stuff with them during the summertime or things of that nature. I played, rec league baseball during the summertime. At church, I was very involved in our churches at the time, youth programs and Wednesday night services. So I had a lot of interaction. I would go to ball games at Carroll County High School, basketball, baseball, football. So I knew a lot of folks through that way, and actually made a lot of friends. Yes.
So we know which field you ended up going to. Did
Right.
you have any interest in law enforcement when you were young?
You know, when I was there at the restaurant, the law enforcement ate there.
Yeah.
That was been big impact on my life. The Hillsville Police Department was in there, Virginia State Police, the Carroll County Sheriff's Office. All those uniformed officers would come in there, eat lunch, eat their supper, and they were very nice to me. And then my uncle was a state trooper, retired, and so I got a lot of exposure to law enforcement at an early age. And I always had a very high regard for those men and women that did that job at an early age. And I was taught to have that respect from the very start.
Of course.
So that it made an impact on my life, but that was not really what I really wanted to do. It was always in the back of my mind, possibly, but that wasn't my first goal in life, no. But it's been very rewarding to me in my career.
Did you heavily consider any other careers?
Not really, other than what my dream was originally, and that was to be a professional Southern gospel singer. That was my goal. That's what I was actually singing in a group locally, starting when I was about 12, 13 years old, and sang with them for about 11 years, and we grew it into a trio, and we traveled, and by the time I was, I'm going to say probably about 23, 24, I finally had to resign because of having a family. But we were doing about 80, 85 singings a year, plus working full-time, and working a full-time job, and had a wife and a child at home, and I had to give it up. But I was actually pursuing that dream at one point of trying to make that happen.
And is that what you mostly did after graduating high school?
Actually, yeah, I was doing it during that, and I was working and traveling and doing all that together. I actually, when I got out of school, I paid my way through a little small singing school kind of thing out in Nashville called the Stamps Baxter School of Music. I went to Nashville and stayed there for 2 weeks at Belmont University and took stage performance. I took vocal lessons, things of that nature that was built around the Southern gospel music industry from some of the professionals that was in the business at the time. So I went and paid myself through that program and tried to build that, and made a lot of friends there that now actually sings full-time in Southern gospel music. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah.
Is that something you're still interested in or do now?
I am, and actually I still do it, yes. When time permits, churches may call, certain venues may call for benefits or that nature, and say, hey, we'd love you to come sing. So I've got a system, and I'll go and set up and sing for them when I can, and my wife will sing a few songs with me here and there, but yeah, I still get up and sing by myself.
Well, that's mainly how I knew you,
Yeah.
was through singing.
Really?
At Carroll County High School?
Yes.
I knew the answer to that question. but-
Really?
Yeah.
Well, so you guys knew more than I thought you did about me.
Yeah, my
Yeah.
grandfather, he set up a lot of those singings up at the high school.
Oh, really?
Mhm. Yeah, so he said that we used to go with him.
Yes.
Sell drinks in into the auditorium lobby.
Right, in the
Well,
concession
that's-
area
mhm.
there.
Yeah.
Right.
So, like the McCameys and all those.
Right, the McCameys. Yes, that's what I grew up around. It's amazing how much I find out about people and knowing that stuff, that type of music. But that was my goal, and it still is a passion of mine. When you're born with that in your heart, and it's something that you have a passion about, it never goes away.
Yeah.
That's why I could never give it up, really. I tried to give it up after I got out of the group at that time I sang with, was called Blood Bought. It was myself and Kirk Montgomery and Dustin Montgomery. Both now do their own things as well, but that is something I never really gave up on. But when I got out of the group, it was just so much change in my life that I just quit singing. And I always said I'd never sing by myself. I was more of a trio, quartet type person, group-oriented mindset. And I always said I'll never sing solo music. And my mother always told me, don't ever say you won't do something.
Yeah.
Well, she was right. So about 8 years ago, I got up and sang a song at church where we attend at Skyview Baptist, and some people seen it, talked about it, and then next thing you know, 2 or 3 years down the road, I was getting calls more and more, and 3 years solid up until COVID hit, I was doing it. My wife and I, we were traveling, doing about 50 to 55 singings a year,
Wow. So every week, really.
and just about once a week.
And how far would y'all travel for those shows?
And most of it was right here in Carroll County. I done a few in Floyd, Surrey County, Wythe County. It was starting to branch out a little further when COVID hit, and then I ran for public office, ran for sheriff in 2019. So that year I ran for office, I had 50, I think around 55, if my memory's right, places that called for me to come that year. So I was trying to run a campaign. I was a school resource officer at the high school at the time, and doing singings and trying to lead the music at our church on Sundays, went at 9:45 service, and so I stayed pretty busy.
Yeah.
No kidding.
Oh yeah. So you tried to pursue singing full time
I
for a
did.
few years.
I did.
After that, like, how did that kind of end and wrap up? And what was the next phase of your life?
And that's where God has different plans, and we make our plans in our minds, and He's got other plans. I met my wife that I'm married to. Been married to now for 25 years. She and I met, and we got married a year later. We had our first daughter, our child, and we tried to balance all that. I was also during that time a volunteer firefighter for Hillsville Fire Department.
Oh, wow.
But it was too many things, too many places that I had my attention, and I realized I had to come home and I needed to be a father and a husband. At that time, I wasn't in law enforcement. I was working actually in the state prisons. And I finally realized I had to give up something, so I then focused more on my career and being a father and a husband. And that's how I gave it up and kind of transitioned out of that mindset. I realized that I just needed to be there right now, and that God had other things in store, and I didn't know what. So I focused more on my career at that time, working in the Virginia Department of Corrections.
So working in the prison.
Yes.
I'm sure you probably had some pretty interesting experiences.
Well, it wasn't as exciting as you may think, because I was actually in a prison that wasn't as bad as some locations are. I worked at a place called Pulaski Correctional Unit, and Pulaski Correctional Unit now is shut down. It's also been closed by the state, but it was what they called a road camp at the time. Had about, if my memory's right, somewhere around 400 to 500 inmates in it. But they took road gangs out during the daytime. You would take gangs out and they would work on the road. And if you'd seen corrections officers out back in the day, they stood behind them on the side of the road with shotguns and things. That's what I did. And then of course I worked midnights for a while and days shift, and yeah, so that's where I started. But there was times that there were issues, but nothing of really great magnitude, and was thankful for that. I always every little issue that came about always seemed to be worked out fine with no major problems. So I was there for almost 5 years.
Okay. Did you get old after a while going in every day? Because I've talked to some people that work in the prison. They say after a while it just wears you down.
It does. And to give you a little backstory on how that began, I was actually engaged to my wife, and I was working at Cavalier Express full time. And she was working part time at, if my memory's right, I think it's Hardee's. It's usually Hardee's or Pizza Hut, but I believe it was Hardee's. And we were getting married, and I knew that I was not going to be able to do a lot in the future working full time at Cavalier Express. And don't get me wrong, it was a great place to work. They were really good to me. But it wasn't going to be something to sustain what I was wanting to do as a new husband.
Yeah, of course.
And so I was trying to figure out what I was going to do there in that regard, and I had a relative that came in at the time in Cavalier Express and said, "Are you looking for anything future-wise?" And I said, "Well, I don't know." And they said, "Well, we have an opening at the prison I work in for a commissary clerk." And I didn't know what that was, and it was basically a convenience store for the inmates inside of the prison. It's a part-time job, but it paid more part-time hourly than what I was making an hour full-time. But I'd have to drive to Pulaski. Well, it's kid Pulaski. It was actually Dublin in the Fairlawn area. And I thought, well, it'd be a good place to get my foot in the door. So I applied, and I got hired, and they hired me to start the week after my honeymoon ended. So as soon as my honeymoon was over, I started my new job. And I started there in the commissary part-time for 6 months. I worked in there for $7.50 an hour. And I was driving from Hillsville every day to Fairlawn.
Pretty good drive.
pretty good drive. And now I can only work up to 36 hours a week.
Oh, so there were restrictions.
Yes, but since it was a part-time job,
Oh, okay.
you could not work the full time. Didn't have no benefits, no insurance, no retirement. But I was just had turned 21 in that December. We got married in November, and I turned 21 on December. And April came, and found out that I was going to be a new father. So then I had to realize that, now I've got to look about insurance, things of that nature. And then I had to start thinking of things, and I told them I was going to have to look for something in that regard, and they said, hey, we got an opening for a corrections officer. We're going to give you a shot as a corrections officer. And then they put me over full-time as a corrections officer, said you've done a good job dealing with inmates in this regard. And I started that position and went to the academy in Richmond and got certified as a corrections officer in the state of Virginia.
Okay.
And I stayed there for almost 5 years, just about. I was just a couple months, maybe about 4 months shy of becoming there 5 years total. But what moved me out of that, to answer your question, is that I just knew that I still thought law enforcement in my home would be the place to be. And so the Hillsville Police Department had an opening that they advertised. And I didn't apply. And so with me living in Hillsville and having the background of living in Hillsville, knowing everyone, and my parents having the business there that they just sold within the last 8 years prior to that, I thought, I'll put in for it maybe. Then I decided, no, I'm not going to. I'm not going to get it, so I didn't. So they didn't hire anyone that first time. The chief didn't hire anyone, and he had to re-advertise. So it came back open again about 3-4 weeks later, maybe a month. And I thought, well, what am I out? I'll just fill out an application. If I don't get a call, I'm not out nothing.
Yeah.
So I applied and ended up getting it. And they hired me and put me through the police academy, and I stayed there for almost 3 years until I got hired at the Carroll County Sheriff's Office in 2005.
So where was this academy that you went to at?
New River Criminal Justice Training Academy, which is in Dublin.
And was that like a few week process or a few months?
When I went through, it was 18 weeks.
18 weeks.
Yes.
Do you feel like your time at the correctional facility prepared you for law enforcement?
Absolutely, I do. Yes. The time in the facility was very educational. Going back to my original background, from a school setting, the positives that I said was it taught me how to be able to work alone, to learn independently. But now when it came to conflict or issues that were more prominent into a major high school setting, I did not have that because I was in such a small environment with very little problems. So now you're putting a young man that's been in a small Christian school setting into a state prison. So what it did for me in those 4.5 years, the struggles that I did learn through and go through, it taught me a lot about dealing with different ethnicities, different views, because you would have so many different types of people in that prison that were not just from Southwest Virginia. They could have been from Northern Virginia. They could have been from the Tidewater area. They could have been from the very far end of the state that you could farther imagine, all the way over across into the Eastern Shore.
Yeah.
And then there was people in there from out of state, New York, Pennsylvania. People got in trouble that was in the state of Virginia. This is where they're pulling their time. So I had, gangs and people that were different religious backgrounds and way that they were brought up. And so I had to learn how to communicate and also be able to accomplish the goals that the Department of Corrections had me there to do.
Yeah.
And be the authority that I needed to do, but also communicate that on different levels with different types of individuals. That's a type of learning that I believe helped me more than anything that I could have took in any type of class. If that makes sense.
Oh, of course, completely. Communicating an idea in many different formats.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And learning how to deal with conflict too. I bet dealing with
Conflict.
enemies is-
Yeah.
And that is a very difficult thing because Now, as we all know, it is everywhere.
Of course, yeah.
And knowing that the world that we're living in, around every corner, there's some type of conflict. You know, and I try my best to resolve that conflict or to be the peacemaker that I can be. Yeah.
So after you left the prison system,
Yes,
you joined the Hillsville Police Department.
that is correct.
What was it like putting on the badge for the first time?
I'll never forget it. First day at work. I woke up that morning. I was supposed to report to the police department and be there at 6 a.m. Couldn't hardly sleep the night before. And I got up real early and got my uniform on. And I'll never forget, I went and woke my wife up to show her. And I couldn't believe that I was actually getting to be a police officer in the hometown that I had spent so much time in. I was very honored and proud to wear that badge. And the feeling of pride to represent something bigger than me, that is a feeling I'll never forget as long as I live. Yeah.
So, was it a huge learning curve the first few weeks on the job?
It was. Yeah. Being a corrections officer versus being a police officer are two different worlds. They're both very tough. They're challenging in their own regard. So even though I had some skills that I learned that I could utilize in this position of a new role as a police officer, now I'm having to learn how to deal with things that I never had thought about learning to deal with mental health issues that people have in the community that I'm being called to deal with, and breaking and enterings and auto accidents, understanding law, knowing code sections that you have to charge. You know, we had things inside the institution at the prison that you could do certain similarity things with. You had institutional violations that you could charge inmates with violating, but you had to learn a whole nother
Set of those.
set.
Yeah.
Correct. So it had its learning curves. Absolutely.
And was it more stressful than you thought it was going to be?
No, I'll be honest about that. I don't feel the stress was any more than what I had in the prison. I actually felt like I was a little more free.
Yeah.
There were moments it was stressful on the calls you were on, but as a overall career, I didn't feel no more stressed from that change at all.
Was it much of a transition going from the police department to the sheriff's office?
That was another change that had a significant difference. The town of Hillsville, at that time when I was there, and I left in, 2000 and, I believe it was 2005, if my memory's correct, I believe. I have to think now that time slips away so quickly. I started there in 2002 and at Hillsville, and I left and went there in 2005. So after almost 3 years going to the sheriff's office, the biggest difference was the amount of patrol area. You're going from like a
Fairly small area.
a small area, yes. Town of Hillsville at that point was even smaller than it is now as far as their incorporated limits. I think it was like that point maybe 3 miles or 4 miles, something like that, as far as patrol area of coverage. And I was going to a county with 475 square miles of coverage. A lot of folks don't realize how big Carroll County is. And you know, in a population, I think the town of Hillsville at the time had somewhere around 2,000 to 3,000 people, and now I had a population of right at 29,000. Call volume, knowing where to go, a lot of roads, knowing how to get there.
That's what I was going to ask. And it sounds like a silly question, but I know back in the day without GPS,
Correct.
getting lost.
Yes.
Did y'all ever get lost responding to calls?
You know, you would think that would be a case, but when you have a communications center, they have those maps on their computers, and they would tell you go here, take a left here or a right there on this road, and then you could get you there. And when you start out new, that's how you have to go a lot back then until you figured it out. But what you would do is when you start and get to be by yourself, if you wasn't on calls, you drove a lot of the county just looking at everything, trying to remember where everything is, and you try to familiarize yourself with every road that there is. And then when you would get calls to areas, that would help because they would get you there and you remembered how you got there, you remember that road, you remember that call, and you have to do reports on those things. So it helped you to remember everything that you were doing in your communities.
Okay. So I saw that you had, or the sheriff's office had, recently, I don't want to say hired, but acquired new bloodhounds.
Correct.
What's it like working with canine units?
Oh, they're great.
Yeah.
I love my canines. I don't get to spend much time with them because they're with their handlers and they go home with them.
Yeah.
But they bring them into the office when they're around, and they'll come in and come in my office and see me and, you know, give up my lap or, you know, whatever as the canines would do. But they're great. You have one new canine, one new bloodhound.
Okay.
Name is Goose.
Goose, yeah.
Yes, we got him back in December, and didn't cost anything to anyone. It was donated.
Yeah.
Yes, correct. And he's growing quickly, but he is great. And you can actually follow him on Instagram if you didn't know
really?
that.
Okay.
Yes, so if you guys got Instagram, you can follow Goose and his handler and watch what he does and some of his things that he's got going on. And so yes, Goose is doing well. And we just recently got another new canine named Ricky.
Okay.
And he is a narcotics canine. My handler, Deputy Musser, just finished up a 6-week training course with him at a canine training facility down in the Carolinas. Also got this canine through no cost to the taxpayers. We have other avenues in which we can do that through other sources. So we were able to get enough money together through other sources of our jobs through what's called asset forfeiture, from when we have like drug busts, things of that nature. We've made arrests and the state awards money to us for whatever we've seized. Okay. So we took those monies that we'd accumulated over a course of time and was able to purchase that canine through that. But Ricky is absolutely going to be a great asset to us. With the new changes that we had in some of the state laws under marijuana being made legalized.
Yeah.
Other patrol dogs, we call them, their narcotics were imprinted on the odor of marijuana. So now we had to get one that's not imprinted with the marijuana. So this canine will be able to still do all the other major narcotic violations and be able to do that, but also can track, also can be utilized in other areas. So, and we're looking forward to getting Ricky going. He just has recently come on last week, so we're looking forward to that.
So did you ever work with a canine when you were an officer?
No, that's one I did not get the opportunity to be involved with. It was in my mind at one point, but that canine position is very, very demanding. They have to train with that partner, that canine, for so many hours a week. When you're home, you've got to work with the dog. You have to continue to be close with that partner. I want to say partner instead of a dog. I mean, they're partners. They're family, and they have to be constantly working together, training together as one unit. And it takes a lot of time, a lot of effort. And those guys and women that choose to do that in this profession is a lot of work. But I think it's probably one of the most rewarding jobs you can probably do in this type of field.
Well, I have a relative that worked in Miami Beach, Florida. As
Okay.
a police officer. And he said when they were partying on the beach, he said you could send officers out there all day. He said they released the dog. He said they could trace the path of the dog through the crowd. He said they were really responsive
Right.
to the canine units.
Oh, yes.
But he said they were really.
The canine makes a big difference.
Yeah.
It really does. Yeah. We're excited about our canine program and where it's growing.
One of the benefits I saw to the office having bloodhounds instead of other breeds was that they have more endurance and that they can do longer
Correct.
searches.
And that's why I want to go with some canine units that are bloodhounds, because of what you just said. You know, let's say you have a missing child that has got out into the woods, or they've gone to a part of the county where there's not a lot of people, and we have to track for a long, long way. Or it could be an elderly person, you know, with dementia or some other type of health issues, and they go out in the middle of the night and no one can find them. You know, we are able to pull that canine bloodhound into that environment and track for long stretches. The other canine, like Ricky, where they're designed, as you probably have done your research on, they tire out a lot quicker. They can probably do 2 or 3 miles, they're done, and you may even have to rest them every little bit. These bloodhounds will keep going and going. So I thought it's beneficial to have
Mixture of both.
a mixture of both. because I would hate not to have the tools necessary to complete the job that we have in front of us. And so, want to be prepared, want to always think of the what if, and rather know that I've prepared for that, and it's better to have and not need than to need to not have.
Yeah, it's true.
Does the sheriff's department use drones? Because I know some search and rescue teams use infrared cameras to find people.
We are in the process of looking into that. It's very costly. Mm-hmm. There are some grants out there that my staff and myself have been looking into and talking about. It is something that we're hopeful that we can bring to our office in the near future. But at this point, no, we do not yet have the drone program yet. But we are definitely interested in it.
How helpful would drones be in an area like this with a lot of trees and obstacles, really?
Oh, it'd be an amazing asset. There's so many hills and valleys and so much rough terrain in areas that you can't get vehicles, and that would be so much of a help to be able to get up above everything and to see.
So it'd be more useful for like plain areas instead of like forest. Am I understanding you correctly?
No, I mean like right here, like the forest, this is exactly what it would be perfect for.
Okay.
Yeah, because there's so many different valleys and mountains and rough terrain that we couldn't get everything in there. So yeah, that's where we would be beneficial to having a drone. Trying to get cars in some of these locations or patrol vehicles, even some of the sawmill type roads would even be very difficult to get some of the vehicles in that I've been up over the years.
I see, okay.
And training would probably be an obstacle too, wouldn't it? Because of the FAA.
Right, we've got to make sure we do all of our stuff correctly, and getting with the FAA. I mean, we have to absolutely make sure we do everything correctly. But we're in the process of looking into all that right now.
Yeah. Okay. So this might be a while since we covered this topic. So you went and you started the sheriff's department
in 2005. Correct.
2005. How long did you work there?
I've been there ever since. Yeah.
And before you changed,
correct. I've held many roles since then. It's been this is 2023, so you're looking at 18 years I've been here, and I've loved every minute of it, even on the bad days. And when I say love every minute of it, people say, "Well, you couldn't love every minute of it." You got to love the bad times too. If you can't love it through the bad times, you're going to give up on this career. There has been days I've wondered why I do it. There's days that I've wondered, why am I putting my family through this type of environment of work and the stress, the worry, because it doesn't affect me alone. It affects my wife, my children, my mother, my father, even my aunts and uncles. I mean, they know what I'm out doing every day. And, it's something that you see it take a toll. It affects the home. So, there's times you ask yourself why. But I never one time really felt like that it was the right thing just to quit. Even on those days, because I still loved putting that uniform on every day and going to work. There was something about every day getting up and putting that uniform and badge on that meant something to me. And today it still does. So I've done a lot of roles in the last 18 years.
Did you start out as a road deputy?
I did. That's what I was hired for by Sheriff Manning at the time. Okay. He was in office, and he hired me, and I went straight to the patrol and stayed there until January 1 of 2012.
And what did you do after that?
Sheriff Gardner took office January 1, 2012, and I got promoted to investigator's position. Okay. So then I went to a criminal investigations division.
So he was the sheriff for 8 years?
Correct.
And then you ran for sheriff. What inspired you to do that?
A lot of prayer. Yeah. Be honest with you. I'm not just saying it because I'm on the podcast. I really felt like that it was something I was being led to do in my heart. Mm-hmm. It wasn't something I had a goal just to say one day I want to be the sheriff. Mm-hmm. I knew the actual amount of work, the challenges that came with that role. Being now in that position of a deputy for so many years, under two sheriffs. But I felt like that's what it was time for me to do, that I was supposed to do that. No one asked me. No one tried to talk me into it. I had more to try to talk me out of it. And rightfully so. And the reason I say that, I believe that if someone can't talk you out of it, then you're doing it for the right reasons. because that's one thing you've got to do. If you're going to serve people, you're going to have to do it with the right heart and the right frame of mind, because not everybody's going to like you. You can't make everybody like you. As much as I do try that every day to do the best I can to make everyone like me, that's not what I'm elected to do. I'm elected to do a job by the Code of Virginia, and the Constitution of the United States, and the Constitution of Virginia.
Yeah.
But I also need to do it with that heart, the servant's heart, to even care about those that doesn't care about me. And that includes my staff. You know, there's times that I've got to be I hate to use the word boss. That's not my favorite term. I really don't like that word. But that's where people relate to. But sometimes you still have to be the boss and make decisions that even maybe your employees doesn't like.
Yeah.
But you've got to make the best decision for everyone. And you got to discipline where it needs to be disciplined. And you've got to do the best you can. But I knew those things going into my decision to run for office. But I started thinking about it hard, probably 2016.
Okay. So a few years before you got
Yes, a lot of discussions in my home with my wife. I wasn't going to do it or make a decision if she wasn't 100% behind me.
Yeah.
If she didn't have a peace in her heart about it, I was not going to do it. We come to an agreement. I said, I feel like that's what I'm being called to do in my life, at this point of my life. And she wasn't so sure. And I said, if you don't have peace, then it's not going to happen. I'm not going to do it. It's got to be a mutual decision. And about 6 months to a year maybe went by, and one day she come home from work and she said, "Yep, you're going to do it, and I'm behind it, and that's what's supposed to happen."
Yeah.
And I said, "Okay." And I said, "Well, we'll just wait and see what happens." And then, of course, about another year and a half so went by before it was time to run, and I put my name in there, and the rest,
won.
and I won.
Yeah.
And I was absolutely amazed I won. I'll be honest with both of you guys. I'm not just saying that. I never one time felt like that it was given. I was absolutely shocked when I won the election in 2019.
You won by a margin of 6%, right?
It was,
You got 55%.
I got 60%
Okay.
to about 30, like almost 61% to about 39% of the vote.
Okay. Sorry, I mixed up my numbers a bit.
Pretty big margin
Yeah.
in politics.
But yeah, like I was about to say, even 6% is a large amount.
Yeah, I think, and I'm not a big political guru type person. You guys made me more than I am, but I think if you win an election over a 5-point margin, that's kind of like huge.
Yeah.
And I won it by, I believe, almost like 21 points, almost a 20% margin.
Like substantial.
Did you enjoy campaigning?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Campaigning is probably one of the hardest parts of the job. You have to get thick skin because you're going to get told things you don't want to hear. Rejection. You try hard to not let it get to you, but you're just trying to do it for the right reason, and not everybody sees it the way that you see it, and everybody don't know your heart. Only myself and God knows my heart, and you just got to try to move on to the next.
What's campaigning like for the first time? Is there anything you did specifically or had in mind?
No, not really. I didn't have any advisors. I didn't have anybody coaching me. I didn't have anybody running my campaign. I did it all myself.
Looking back, would you do it that way again, or would you change anything?
No, I do it exactly the same way. I wanted to continue to be Kevin.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times watching politics on TV, and that's what people kind of get a grasp for it at. You watch it on the television, through the news, or whatever source you watch, and I didn't want that to be what I stood for during my campaign. I didn't want to lose who I was, because if I wanted people to vote for me, I wanted to vote for me of who I am as a person, not because I was a police officer for 20 years.
Yeah.
And I didn't want it to portray to be something that I wasn't. And so I tried to really stay true to the fact and remember, don't change who I am just because I'm trying to get people to see my vision and see who I am. And that's all I really did. I just tried to stay true to me. And I think that's something that I believe we miss in that regard. When we look at politics, we get so focused on the drama that surrounds it, that it drowns out seeing who the person is that's running. And so I just tried to stay true to that, and I don't think that I could have done anything different that would have been any better.
Yeah. It would have to be, even with the county election, being very proactive and getting out there. Was that tough for you? Been at events and stuff all the time.
No, actually, it wasn't. I think going back now to my singing career, I hate to say career, but my singing days, you know, I was already used to being out in the public. And my parents owned a restaurant for 20 years in a community, you know, and so I had always been going to things, churches as a kid, going to church, being around the public at a restaurant, going to ball games, going to all these other things that went on. I was used to going out and being involved already. So no, it was not hard for me to do that. I'm actually one of these people that I'm hardly ever home. I'm never still. I'm always going somewhere, doing something. So that was actually pretty easy part for me. Yeah.
But you said you were shocked when you won.
I was.
What
I
was
really
that first
was.
day like when you figured out you had actually
I
won?
was.
And turning the new year and being the sheriff.
I still can't really grasp it, to be quite honest with you. I really can't. There's days I still get up and I look at myself when I'm getting ready in the mornings and putting my uniform on. I can't believe that that's what I get to do.
Yeah.
That really happened, and that 3 years have went by. I'll never forget it, though, when it happened that night. I was basically just in a daze. It felt like I was in a dream. I didn't get to go to sleep till about 3:30 that next morning. And the next day I had to start trying to do a transition and working towards getting things to where I wanted to go and starting the transition phase, because it doesn't start January 1. I have to start preparing just like any other office that you may see on the news, whether it be governor or president. I have about 7 weeks to start getting everything in order. So on January 1, we're hitting the ground running.
Yeah.
And I had to get my staff in place where I wanted it. I had to start looking at replacing some that were retiring. And I had to do interviews and have people getting ready to be hired. That way they could start January 1. They had to be able to get sworn in prior to January 1. I had a lot of things. So the next morning I got up. I slept like 3.5 hours. I got up, went to my office, and got with the administrative assistant and told her what I needed. You know, I need this started on. I want this started on. Can you start this, and this? And I already had in my head what I wanted to do. I knew where I wanted to go. I knew what I needed. I knew where my vision was that was in my heart for the last 3 years. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't going to sit back and say, well, I've won. Yeah. Now let's just take it easy. No, now it's time to get to work. Yeah. And I've tried to keep that mindset for the last 3 years. And now 3 months that I've been in office. So that's it's been something I've gave every bit of my energy to since January. Let me back up. November of 2019.
So one of your platforms when campaigning was getting a school resource officer or a school security officer. Is that the correct?
That is correct.
Into every public school in the county.
That is correct.
And you were successful with that, might I add, with no cost to taxpayers.
That is correct.
How did you accomplish that?
Through help with the Carroll County Public School District. Dr. Burnett and I have always had a good working relationship. When I was a school resource officer at Carroll County High School, I worked with him on some things, and I've known him for a long time. I knew him prior to my role in the schools as a school resource officer for the sheriff's office. And just communication. But he offered to help do some of the paperwork that he'd seen about a grant. And they were working on it for the school security side, and they called me up, said, hey, we're getting ready to throw this in there for the school security. We seen you want us to go ahead and just help you throw y'all's in there too? And I said, absolutely. I said, we're looking at trying to get that started. I said, but that just helps me out even more. So it just all worked out well. It's amazing how some things can just work out without you even having to force it. So just good working relationship between my office and the Carroll County Public Schools. made it happen, and the grants from the state of Virginia that we were able to get, and that's a lot of that's to do with the state of Virginia able to apply that and have those there for agencies and localities to use. So, but hey, we're blessed that we're able to get those in these schools in Carroll County.
sure, yeah.
Absolutely, I'm very, very excited about that. You know, if nothing else, I will be excited that we was able to grow our security and safety for our students in Carroll County.
And this is something we haven't touched on yet, but you were a school resource officer
I
yourself.
was.
Did that experience motivate you to try to implement this change?
Yes.
Yeah.
6.5 years, almost 7. If I'd have finished out that school year, I'd been there 7 years at Carroll County High School as a school resource officer. And probably one of the most rewarding jobs I've done in my career. That's why when I came in to talk to you guys and ask you about that, you know, I still go over the school some. Matter of fact, I'll be there in a few weeks speaking to some students there in the auditorium.
I was a part of
yeah, you
one of your
talk-
groups a few months ago.
Oh,
Yeah.
good. So I'm going back and doing those, and I've been doing that annually ever since I've left. You know, I've not just forgotten about the students at Carroll County High School. You'll still see me in there sometimes walking through, visiting with students and staff, and I go to the middle school, I go to elementary schools when I can. I don't just sit behind the desk, and I value those relationships because I don't want people to think that their sheriff is somebody that sits high up on a platform, and that I'm in behind some desk that you won't see me, or you can't have access to me, or you can't talk to me. That's not who I am. And I want to be the same person you see in this uniform as you run into in Food Line.
Yeah.
And I want to be able, when my schedule permits, and I do have a pretty hectic schedule, but I do try to come out and be there. And so yes, that had a big part of that in me, because I learned in those years how much I loved the students.
Yeah.
When I went to work every day for 6.5 years, this is what I went with the mindset of. I went into work every day with the mindset of that today I am the father to 1,100 students. Now, I don't mean that literally.
Yeah.
But if I didn't have that mindset to take care of everyone in that building, if I didn't have that mindset that they were my children, would I really be giving the public and the citizens that are entrusting that safety to me, would I be giving it what it deserves? And so that's the way I looked at it every day. And to care about each and every one, even the ones that didn't like me, that I would care about their safety and care about who they are and what they're going through the best I could every day. And I still instill stress that to my resource officers that I have working for me, that is what you've got to gain in your heart to understand. If you want to be a school resource officer, it's not about standing over there with a gun, just kind of standing there, look at me, I'm a police officer. This is about caring about your community, the children of the community, and forming relationships. Even on the days where you have to be the authority, they're going to come back and you're going to have to care about them just as much as you did before.
Yeah.
So that's where my heart has always been with that since I became a resource officer.
Yeah. And I can speak for all the students at the middle school and at the high school that we all love the school resource officers
Absolutely.
being there.
Thank you.
They've always been, and I've always admired them, and I've always felt I could come to them with whatever I needed.
And that's what we want. You know, if I can't produce good people to be in those roles, then I have failed. And so I actually handpick those folks. When you see them come in there, those are ones that I'm going to pick to go there, because if I don't feel like they're cut out for it, they shouldn't be there. And every police officer is great that I have. Every deputy is great, but everybody's personalities are different. And I've said this many, many times. The school resource officer position is very delicate. Every personality is not going to fit in that school. I got some that needs to be out on patrol. I got some that needs to be in investigations. I've got some that needs to be in courts. But I need to know where their personalities fits best for these roles and pick those people based on their personalities, what work ethic I've seen out of them, and how I believe that they will do that job and that they can build that relationship with the schools and with the students.
Yeah. And for a lot of people, that's their first interaction with law enforcement.
Absolutely.
Like going back to elementary school, Gator was that
Gator.
Grayfield, and that was a lot of people's first. That was one of my first interactions with a police officer. So seeing a positive role model like that, and that has to be beneficial.
It is, and
to their lives.
and Gators, went on to be with the Lord, and he went through a lot of health problems, and we miss him every day. And he was a dear friend of mine, and he was a big impact in getting me to where I am today. Yes. It's amazing how people come into our lives at certain times, and we don't realize what the impact they have until later on down the road. He's one of them, like you just said.
Absolutely.
I get a little emotional about
No problem.
certain things like that. That's
It's understandable.
a dear friend. Yeah.
Could you explain the difference between an SRO and an SSO?
Sure. So an SRO, people see that in the newspapers, they'll hear about it on TV. That is a school resource officer. Now they can be a police officer from a city, they can be a deputy sheriff. School resource officer works for the law enforcement agency that has them in that facility. They do not work for the school districts. They do not answer to the principals. They work with them. There is a coexistence together for the safety of all. School security officers work for the school district. They are hired by the schools. They answer to the schools. They can do security protocols and enforce certain things under the handbooks or the policies of the schools, where the school resource officer enforces the Code of Virginia. Arrest powers are only up under the SRO. School security cannot arrest, but they can detain under the circumstances until we arrive or if we have to deal with the situation. They are certified to handle a firearm for emergencies. And everyone that Carroll County Public Schools has in there that are school security, we actually have a memorandum of understanding type thing. We take them to a firing range. One of my firearms instructors will take them there and qualify them to carry that weapon under Department of Criminal Justice Services standards. Okay. So they are taken to a range. They've got to meet the same qualifications as one of the deputies do, and are being proficient in their handling of safety of a firearm. And if my memory is correct, and I don't want to speak out of turn, but I believe if my memory is right, every school security officer that Carroll County has is a former law enforcement officer. So it's not someone they're hiring just because they want to be.
That was my next question.
Yes, there is some experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Correct.
Correct.
Did being an SRO, it has to help you understand kids better. Did it affect you as a parent?
Did it affect me as a parent? That's probably a better question for one of my children. They probably be more objective in that answer. I'm sure it affected me. I think one thing it probably did on a negative is that it probably took away some of my important times with my children. I probably gave more time at school to functions and taking care of everybody else's children, and probably neglected mine doing the job when I probably should have been home more, because you had ball games, you have other events, prom. When my daughter went to prom and my son went to prom, I had to be there to work it as a high school resource officer. So while everybody else was getting to enjoy that with their families, I was there to make sure everybody's families was safe. So, it's a different type of circumstance in that regard. So I'm sure that my children would answer that a little differently, but I'm sure it did. I don't think there's no way it couldn't have. But at the same time, I think it may have made me better too, because I learned a lot from the students as well. It probably taught me a little bit more of understanding the world that they live in now, that young people are living in. It's so much different than what I grew up in and the generations prior to me. The dangers, the social media, the things I had to understand as a parent, that I had teenage children in my home that were in high school, and I was dealing with problems that other students were having in the school that they attended due to social media or conflicts. And so, my students there would go through all these things, and I'd go home and then try to be the father of the evenings and know what their day has been about. So it made a little bit of a difference in that regard, I'm sure, in probably ways that I don't even know.
Yeah.
There's a current drug and nicotine vaping epidemic that's going across the country right now. How has that impacted your time as a school resource officer and as a sheriff? What changes have you saw in the area and in students?
The nicotine and the vaping, that's been a big deal.
Yeah.
When I left in 2019 and took office as sheriff, it was ramping up. It started seeing a big increase in that problem in the schools, and probably that year to year and a half prior to, it started getting worse and worse. Then after I left, it became even more worse. You've got the THC vapes. I was starting to see some of those a little bit when I left in 2019. Starting to have a little more of a problem there. It's a major problem across the country.
Yeah.
And I don't think anyone's got the answer for it. I don't care what chief or sheriff or whatever title of law enforcement that you can put in place. This problem is going to be something we're going to deal with for years to come unless there's some type of regulations put on it through the federal government or the state government. And the law doesn't let us have it so much, but finding those little things are very difficult. As you guys are around it every day, I know you are. I knew what it was like when I was there, and I can imagine what it is now. You're walking by a restroom, and I get it. And they're in their cars, they're everywhere, and it's a problem that really I don't think anyone has an exact answer to fix. It's a new thing. That's presented itself. What you're looking at in a total of 5 years and a growth probably thereabout, and we're always scrambling to find ways to fix the problem. We're always working on it, discussing it, trying to find avenues. But I don't think anyone's come up with a solution yet that's actually the fix-all for the problems. But it is in fact impacting people.
Absolutely, especially with the new fentanyl arrest.
Yes,
That's
yes.
coming out. That's
And
really
it
scary.
concerns me as a sheriff, but it also as a citizen of this county. The fentanyl is dangerous. My deputies are out here every day and trying to get drugs off the street and working undercover cases and going into places that you don't know what's in there and searching vehicles and getting narcotics and coming in contact with things that you don't know that you're going to touch, and it could be a fentanyl exposure. So we're always concerned about that, and we're always working hard to do that. And I'm always sending my deputies to trainings and anything I can to get them better at looking for these things and trying to find a way to stop it everywhere I can. Yeah.
So how do products like if products is even the right word, how do these things come into the area, or even I don't want to say black market, but come into the area? How are they sold? How do these products get from wherever they're made here?
So they're made in other locations, of course.
Yeah.
Fentanyl is something that's, and of course, like methamphetamines, it's all brought in from other localities. There may be some that maybe coming out of West Virginia, North Carolina. A lot of the stuff that we've been hearing recently is coming out of West Virginia. North Carolina is always going to be a big area where it comes out of, and it's not really all being made there. Most of your stuff's coming out of Mexico.
Mm-hmm. I read that Mexico is one of the biggest fentanyl producers
That's
in the
correct.
world.
Yeah, Mexico is your biggest producer of the problems that you're seeing, and it filters its way up. However they go through their networking, it's just like a business, and that's what I try to explain to people. When you look at it, it's basically an illegal business, and they have employees. And if you look at it from that perspective of a business with, we'll just say thousands of employees that are smuggling, that's doing this job, and we're all trying our best to stop it with the resources we have.
It's hard.
It's hard, and it's a little bit of a task that really, until the federal government steps up and does something on the borders, we're fighting a battle that we're never going to win. But we're going to keep fighting as hard as we can every day. I've got, like I said, 475 square miles in Carroll County with 29,000 citizens. If I've got a full staff and no one's out sick on some type of personal leave, or someone hasn't quit, I may have 5 patrol units total trying to deal with all the calls for service, traffic issues, looking for drugs. Then you've got to also staff all the schools. You've got to staff 3 courtrooms that's operating at a time most days. You've got to staff those. You've got investigations. You have a civil process division, which is civil papers has to be served every day. All these areas have to be covered by deputies. And I don't have it so much staff because the state of Virginia only gives me so much funding. So when you think about the numbers, you're looking at about 50 people to make a whole office operate every day and try to stop that problem. It doesn't take it very long to figure out that the number's not in my favor.
Yeah, it's not at all.
But we all work together with our federal agencies, our state agencies, Virginia State Police. We have a very good working relationship with them, and we have a drug task force unit that we're involved with called the Twin County Drug Task Force. I have 2 investigators that's assigned to that. That's constantly working as best they can to do undercover work on narcotics problems in this county. My patrol units are always looking for narcotics. I've sent them to narcotics detection schools to finding ways to see indicators for those type of transport of the illegal substances, of those narcotics. So, we're always trying to train to be better and do those things, but then, of course, we still have to take care of our citizens every day, too. When they call for services, issues, problems, we got to come to their homes, whatever the case may be, and we've got to do those things, too. So it's a very overwhelming task if you think about it all real close, but that's a task that we're very excited to be trying to do, and we're going to give it our best shot every day. And I've got a great bunch of folks around me, and those guys are giving everything they got, and those ladies are working hard every day to try to make it the best they can.
How does your relationship with surrounding localities like the Hillsville Police Department, State Police, even Grayson Sheriff Department, how do those relationships impact your work on a daily basis?
They're huge. Chief Goat actually was in my office from Hillsville Police Department. He was in my office this afternoon. He and I talk on a regular basis, whether it be by cell phone or office phone or visiting in our offices. We work close together. If we don't, then the people that suffer are the citizens, because we are in a similar. I hate to use the word similar, but we're in a small area, and we got to help each other, because I don't have but so many, and he doesn't have but so many. So we have to work together, and he and I both are on that page. And when I got elected, we sat down, and we're both right on that same page of working close with each other to help one another. And I can say the same thing about Chief Cooper in the city of Galax, Sheriff Vaughn, his guys, and my deputies all work well together. I can even say the same thing about Floyd and Patrick counties. I talk to those sheriffs on a regular basis. Pulaski County Sheriff, Wythe County Sheriff, even Surrey County, North Carolina, Sheriff Hyatt and myself. We have a good relationship. My agency and his, we've tried to grow that and we've become friends, and so we work well with those agencies, because until we all work together, we're not going to be very beneficial in trying to get this job completed.
It's probably just not those two. It's probably like the ATF and FBI too.
Oh yes,
Federal agencies.
I actually have a deputy that's assigned to an ATF task force.
Okay.
We have people that's constantly working with those agencies, ATF, DEA. Even the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force, I have an investigator that is a contact through them. If there's anything going on in our area, they notify that person in my agency, and then they take the case and work at that point. So we have people that are positioned to deal with anything that comes in from those federal agencies as well, and they come in my office quite frequently, and I'll have those people in there. I had a federal probation officer in there a few weeks ago. For U.S. agencies, it's very important to work well with these people. FBI, DEA, yeah.
So you came by a few years, not a few years ago. I think it was 1 year ago, almost to the date. You came by and talked to our driver's ed class.
So that
I don't recall that.
And we talked about the interstate.
Oh,
That has to be a unique issue coming through.
The interstate. Interstate is. I've got folks that goes out there and works. It's been going on for about, Sheriff Manning started that program when I was a deputy. And it's called a highway safety program. And what it was designed for, we had one of the highest fatality rates in the state of Virginia for the stretch of I-77 in Carroll County. Was one of the highest fatality rates in the state of Virginia. That was sent to us not because we came up with that as a sheriff's office. If my memory's right, I think it came out of the National Highway Transportation Safety Board. They keep record of all those things. And we had a lot of fatalities on I-77. So it gave us opportunity as deputies to make extra money on our time off. Your days off, instead of going to a second job, you could go out on your day off and work overtime money. And it's been successful. The fatality rates have been decreased tremendously. Because it is a very dangerous set of roads through there. And the way that I look at it as well now as the sheriff and not the deputy, so many citizens in our county use that road. If you live in Lambsburg, the Cana community, and you need to get to Galax, you may go up Lambsburg Mountain, but you may decide I need to get to Hillsville quicker. You may come up I-77. Or if you need to go to Mount Airy, you may take that to go to Mount Airy or go to Winston. You may, do that through the I-74 corridor. If you need to go to Wytheville, it is utilized a lot by local citizens every day through exit 19, exit 24. Even if you want to get to Hillsville quick from the Laurel community or over there about the exit 24 area, you may get to Hillsville real quick. You may just come that way instead of going 52. So I believe it's very good to have some deputies out there on the most dangerous highway in our county with no telling what could happen at any given second to try our best to make it as safe as we can. And I mean, if my citizens are going to utilize that road, then I think it's just a benefit that we're out there to try to slow people down. And it's very common for my deputies, probably about once a week or maybe once every 2 weeks. Just take a guess at it, but I know it's about every week or so I'm seeing tickets come in for 100, 120, 119. And this is happening in broad daylight. This ain't 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, nobody's on there. This is daylight hours, when people are traveling the most and over 100 miles an hour.
it's terrifying.
It's terrifying. And then we get narcotics. We've encountered in prior administration, it didn't happen under mine, but we've actually pulled people over that was wanted for murder out of other states, and people didn't even know that they killed them at that point. There has been things of that nature that happened, and I thought, we're not just impacting lives here, but if someone has done something to someone in the state of Florida and one of my deputies caught them, we done a service for not just our state and our county, but we took a dangerous person off the streets that has done something to someone in Florida or wherever. We have helped more than just one. And that's what the job's about. And we lose sight of that. It's easy to point fingers and find fault and, well, you shouldn't do it this way, you shouldn't do it that way. But I guarantee that the people that were affected by that were very grateful that my deputies were out there or those deputies were there and that they're out there to do that job.
And the interstate has to be really, it has to be a scary place for a police officer. My grandfather was a state trooper for 25 years.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And
Well, that's wonderful.
the dangers of it. It's just, you said
Yes.
people from Florida coming up, they might be speeding and be pulled over, but they
Right.
might have done something terrible.
That's
And
correct.
think that the officers pulled
Correct.
them over to that.
Yes, we've run into that numerous times. So, and it gives our deputies an incentive to have a little extra money for their families. Deputy sheriffs does not make a lot of money. Matter of fact, up until last year, when Governor Youngkin was able to get it through the state, and the delegates and senators worked hard for us to get this accomplished. But but the starting salary for a deputy in the state of Virginia was like $37,000 a year, and with insurance for a family plan being about $900 a month for them to have young children, they ain't a lot of money, and so it gives them an incentive to have, we've got an avenue for you to make extra money, and because if they're going to make that living, and you want people to work here, instead of letting them go and get a job elsewhere, they can still do their job here, do what you've hired them to do, but also make a little extra money too. And it's benefiting the safety of our communities and the highway. So it's a good program, but it's a very dangerous place to be. And when I worked as a deputy, I about got ran over one time on a traffic stop on the side of the road. So it's a dangerous place to be.
And there's a law. I forget the name of it. It's like the
Move over law.
move over law, and that's supposed to prevent people from brushing against.
Yes,
people pulled over.
and actually in July 1, it's going to change even more. Anybody that you see with flashing lights, whether it be a pedestrian car, if it's any type of flashing lights in the emergency lane, you are to get in the left lane, if at all feasible.
Yeah.
Slow down. Yes.
That's good.
You also mentioned that day about the flea market.
Flea market.
I personally love the flea market, but I don't have to deal with the downsides of it either. When it comes through town, what is it like for local law enforcement?
It's a bigger headache for the Hillsville Police Department than it is for my guys.
Yeah.
When I worked for Hillsville Police Department, we had to work it very hard and do things, and it's a lot of work. But it's mainly the crowd control and the traffic's always been the major issues. Now you have problems, you'll have conflicts, you have vendors that's being victimized by thefts, people that's stealing. That's always a problem every year. You have folks that come in and try to sell off products that are counterfeit. So you got that problem to deal with as well. And you're always thinking about the firearms issues. Yeah. That's always in the back of your mind because it is a gun show inside the VFW part, which is absolutely great, but we want to be sure everybody's safe. We want to be able to encourage the Second Amendment, but we also want to make sure everybody's safe and what the way they're doing it in that environment. So the Virginia State Police always goes in there and handles that part and making sure everything's done legally under the state law, and they come in and do that on that part, if my memory's correct. But everything goes pretty well. The Hillsville Police Department does a good job, and we try to help if they need to, if they need us to, and we'll come help. And Virginia State Police, but we get through it. But we've been doing it so long now that we just get through it and don't even think about it.
But yeah, especially back in the heyday when, was it late 90s? Early 2000s when it was.
I think it was
absolutely
bigger.
massive.
I think it was bigger then than it has been here in the recent last 5 to 10 years.
I think since COVID, it's died.
Yeah.
That's definitely hurt it. It's hurt a lot of things.
I know the last year was pretty big. It was one of the biggest they've had.
It was
in a
big
while.
last year, and I think it may come back a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a challenge. It's something that other localities does not have to deal with. Yeah.
Now I guess Galax has to deal with the fiddlers, but
They got the fiddlers.
yeah.
Yeah, but no, the flea market's that's a monster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you ever, or has the sheriff department as a whole ever had to help out with the fiddlers, or vice versa?
Years ago, prior to myself coming along, that was very frequent back in the late 80s, early 90s. But we go by, my guys or ladies will go through there and do a walkthrough if they're on shift. But Grayson County will help them out a little bit too. Virginia State Police will to walk through, but they do a pretty good job handling it themselves.
So I know back in the day, was it school buses or buses they used to ship people into?
That's
Carroll
correct.
County?
That's when Carroll County had a jail.
Yeah.
Yes, that's correct.
You're running for re-election this year.
Yes, I am.
When you were elected initially, was that something you thought about when your term runs up? Did you think that you were going to run for another election? If not, what inspired you to run again?
Yes, I never had no doubts that I would run again. I love it too much. I live and breathe it. And I don't say that as a cliche. I don't mean it that way. I mean it literally. My wife, if she was here, would tell you I live and breathe this job with everything in me, even on my days off. My work cell phone is never off. I'll turn it off long enough for it to reset itself and turn it back on. It's on beside my bed every night. I go home when I do get to go home, some nights I'm still on the phone till 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night. And my wife will finally get to talk to me, and she's going to bed. I will come out at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. If you guys follow any of my social media, you'll see that, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, you may see my vehicle parked. I'm saying I'm out here at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning checking business. I'm literally, I will wake up to go out and to do what my deputies do, because I don't believe in asking them to do something I'm not willing to do. If my night shift people are out there, I can go out and check businesses. I can go out patrol too and make sure and show them that I'm not going to ask you to stay up all night long if I'm not willing to come back out and work another 8, 10 hours after I've worked 10 hours today and I've only slept 3. I'm going to get back up and back to work. I do that to show a point that I don't believe in asking anybody to do something that I wouldn't. And I love that because I love the job. And if I don't give everything in me, if I don't do everything that I can think of to try to do the best I can, then I don't feel like I'm doing enough for the citizens that put me here. But I guess you could twist it around in a lot of ways. Perfectionist or crazy or whatever you want to call it. I just have that much passion about it. When I wanted to be a singer, and if I go out and sing somewhere now, I believe in doing the best I can. If someone wants you to be there, if they want you to do something, you give it 110%. You give everything you've got in it to be the best you can at everything that you do. That's who I strive to be every day. And if I'm not pushing myself to be that, how could I expect any of my staff to do that? And I believe that's something that should be expected of me as the person that was elected for this county. So that's why I do those things. So to think about not running again wasn't even an option for me. I love it too much. I'm too young to retire. I just turned 46 in December. Even though I've got my years in and I can retire with the state, I can't draw anything. It had nothing to do with the money. I've been invested so much into this now, 3 years of my life through the COVID, through everything that we've tried to change and work on with the accomplishments that we've brought into the schools and the new canines and bringing DARE back that we're going to be bringing in the next school year starts. We've got 2 that's got certified to bring DARE program back into our schools. We've worked on so many different things by changing our patrol visibility, working on our social media, our community involvement. Shop with a cop, national night out with the schools. There's so many things that we're doing in this community as a sheriff's office that we didn't do prior to 2020. And I'm not taking credit for that, but my agency as a whole has, I believe, through all the challenges, through all the struggles that comes with any type of workplace, but more so for ours because it was during the time of COVID. It was during the time of transition. I was only in office 3 months before COVID hit. And to make all these changes and try to do that with all the roadblocks in 3 months, I'm very proud of that. I didn't give up. My agency didn't give up. My staff, my deputies didn't give up. They didn't give up on me, and I didn't give up on them. So the thought of giving up now and saying I'm not going to do it again, I believe I would be failing those that have put confidence in me. And I know I can't always get the 100%, but there are a lot of people that put confidence in me in 2019, and I'm going to continue to work hard for them as best I can for those that do believe in me. And I'm going to do it for all citizens, even the ones that don't believe in me, to do the best I can every day. And that's who I am. That's who I'm going to continue to be. And we're going to try to push forward, and we're going to hopefully see what the results will be on June 20th at the primary election. And the people will have their choice if they want me to stay again or not on the general election in November. And, I'm going to continue to work hard to try to earn that vote again.
You've talked about the responsibility of sheriff.
Yes, sir.
Because it all comes back to you eventually.
It does.
You mentioned that when we were doing our driver's ed course, just the toll it takes sometimes. The massive amount of responsibility.
It's responsibility, yes.
Do you think anything prepared you beforehand for that type of leadership?
Everything that I did prior to.
Yeah.
I think the whole journey from walking in to that prison at 20 years of age as a part-time commissary worker to patrolling in the town of Hillsville, to patrolling in the county as a deputy sheriff, to being a criminal investigator working on murders, assaults, thefts, to going working in courts even as a bailiff, working a short little time in the civil process division, and then going on to the school resource. Every assignment prepared me for that. It all had a little piece of it, because everything taught me, every little bit of those taught me something. But if I had to pinpoint one that probably prepared me the most, it probably was the resource officer position. Because you talk about responsibility. You know, back when the school resource officer position was created across, you know, the state and started being, I think, pretty well known was back in the mid-90s. It was Carroll County was one of the first in the state of Virginia to have one. And Sheriff Gardner at that time was the first one that Carroll County ever had.
Okay.
And he was up there for many years. I think I'm the second longest serving SRO in Carroll County High School. He was the longest. I think he was in there, I'm going to take a guess, somewhere around 12 to 15 years. Okay. But it's evolved as the world has evolved. The social media, the issues, the vaping, the fentanyl, it's all changed. But everything that I dealt with there prepared me, because the responsibility of protecting and giving everything you got as one person on the campus the size of Carroll County High School, with now having two buildings that was not there prior to me taking over as a school resource officer. I was the first SRO to come in there with the 9th grade building down at the field house.
And there seemed to be 3.
Yes, correct. So I came in when they opened that building up that year. That was my first year as an SRO. So the first day of school, when that opened up for that and 9th grade came down there, I was their SRO. But the responsibility to making sure that the best I could every day for the safety of 1,100, almost 1,200 students, that they could get on the bus every day and come there, or their parents dropped them off there. That was my job every day to make sure they got home. Yeah. That's a responsibility that I never took lightly for 1 second. So I think that responsibility in that regard probably prepared me more than anything. Was there problems in the schools? Oh, absolutely. Was I able to fix everything? Absolutely not. I'm just a person like everybody else. But I was proud of the fact of this. Every student got off the bus or got out of the car, and every student made it home for 6.5 years. Everything else we dealt with the best we could, but everybody got their children back. And that was the ultimate goal every day. And the rest of it we just deal with. And honestly, that's something the supervisor in the prison taught me when I first started there in 1998 as a corrections officer. He said, when you come in this prison every day, you're going to have problems. Yeah. When that gate shuts behind you and that fence shakes and you hear that gate walking into this prison where they let you go home, they could riot or have a problem any moment. Something could happen. You'd be taken hostage, because it'd be 80 of them in one room and one of me. Yeah. He said if you get through the day and no one got hurt, no one got killed, and everybody made it back home and the whole shift went in together and they came out together, everything else we'll just deal with. But as long as no one lost their life, no one got hurt, we've had a good shift. Yeah. And that's how I've tried to live my career. And I've never forgotten that, because he's right. I'm not going to make everything right. I can't make everything perfect. I'll try my hardest every day to be the best and to fix and to try to have the answers you want. And I can't always give that. That's impossible. Yeah. But I'll do my best. But as long as we've done that part, we've had a good day.
Do you have any advice for young people wanting to enter the law enforcement field?
I guess if off the top of my head, if I had to give you one piece of advice, would be to really do some soul searching. Make sure you're doing it for the right reason. A lot of times I'll see some that wants to do it because of the badge, the gun, and the car. I understand that. As a young person, I get it. It's cool. You know, especially Southwest Virginia, getting to carry a firearm every day to work. And, I look at me, I got a gun I walk around on the side of my hip. Oh, that's great. It's not the reason to be doing the job, though. I would say do a lot of soul searching. Make sure before you make that choice that it's something in your heart that you feel like you want to serve others and you want to serve your community. And I know that's something that people hear, oh, service, but it's the truth. This ain't about me. Being a sheriff is not about me at any level. It's about serving others. I've got to serve my staff. I've got to serve this community to the best of our abilities. And that's what we strive to do. It's what I strive to do. So if you ain't willing to serve others, then the job's probably not for them. But I would definitely tell them that. Do some soul searching. If your heart's in it, if it's a calling that you feel in your heart that you can't get away from, then you know your answer. If you could just say, well, it'd be pretty cool, probably need to rethink it. Because being cool ain't going to sustain you when it's getting bad.
Yeah.
Do you think people who are interested should take classes like at the high school, Mr. Boland's classes, or classes at Whitfield Community College? Criminal justice classes.
Absolutely. All those are beneficial. Even if you don't do this line of work, if it helps you understand the point, this ain't for me, especially in the criminal justice class at Carroll County High School, that would be a great place to find out. He's going to cover a lot of things that we do on a small level. And if you think, oh my goodness, this is just not even the tip of the iceberg, if this ain't something I'm going to enjoy for a long period of time, I probably don't need to do this. That's the place to find it out before you put a lot of money and time and education into something that may not be something you want to do with your life. Because if you want a job that's going to make you feel great about yourself all the time, yeah, this ain't probably going to be it. If you like being criticized, talked about, cursed, people wants to make threats against you and your families, if that's the type of thing that don't bother you, you can still think I'm going to go to work the next day, and because if you've got that in your heart, then that means it's in there. If that type of stuff bothers you before you even put the badge on, you probably need to wait a while or do some more thinking.
Yeah. And there are a lot of benefits. I love living in a small area.
Right.
I love this area. I don't know if I ever want to leave it, really. Because it's home.
Good for you. That's right.
It's home. That also has to bring some challenges, too.
Right.
Working at home.
Right.
In this very small area.
Yes.
Kind of
There's the negatives.
Yeah.
Everybody knows everybody. And there's not a way that I can go do my job right and do it the way it should be done and not make somebody mad. I worry over that. It bothers me. It really does. When I feel like somebody got mad at me because we done our jobs.
Yeah.
And I've lost some friends over me making decisions. I know that. And it's been hard to accept that, but it's not because I wanted to. But I've had to make tough decisions that's affected people's lives, but I've done the job that I was elected to do.
Yeah.
And I can't let personal feelings affect the job that we're supposed to be doing. I've laid awake at night worrying over the fact that some family may not be happy because of what we've had to do. Because they knew me prior to or whatever. But if you're going to elect me to do a job, then I'm going to do it the best of my ability by the book, by the law, and what it states. And I'll, be there to hug your neck or cry with you or whatever the case may be, and I've done that. But I can really say I can lay my head on a pillow at night knowing that we've done our jobs in that agency the way that the Code of Virginia says we have to and the way the Constitution says we have to. And I'm always going to be there for even those that don't like me, or maybe mad at me. I think that's another part of the job. People got to realize you got to be there for those, even the ones that don't like you right now. One day may need your help, and if they call, we're coming. And so that's the big part about it in a small community, because it does affect people around. Everybody knows everybody, or somebody's going to say something, and it does affect that. And if you let it, it'll get to you a little bit.
So I think we ask this series of questions every time we're wrapping up an interview, and you answered this question sort of a minute ago. I'm talking about on a wider scale. What is your advice for young people just making their way in the world? They're just starting to get out there, not specifically law enforcement, just in general.
You know, that's a tough question.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that comes to mind that I could probably give you an answer for on that, but I don't know which one's correct answer. You know, everybody's got their opinions. Mm-hmm. Mine will be no different in this regard. It's an opinion. Always be mindful of the decisions you're going to make is the first thing I would say. Everything that you do will always have an impact on somebody. Whether it be your friend, your family, yourself, every decision that we make in life impacts someone. We all got up today and went and done our days. You guys got up and done your normal daily duties, responsibilities, activities, whatever it is you do every day. You both have done something today, whatever that was. Some of it may have been normal, some of it may not have been. I got up and went and done my job as the sheriff of Carroll County. But we all had a choice to make. You could have chose to stay in bed, fought with your parents, went down that road. You had a choice. I had a choice. I could have said, you know, I'm the boss. I'm not going to work today. I'm going to go fishing. No, I've got a job to do. We all have choices, even at a young age. And I've said this in some of the classes that I speak down at the high school, and I believe you may have even heard this, but I look at life as like a big pond. Do you remember me saying this? And if you really think about that, that's the biggest thing I think I could tell young people, looking back on it. And seeing that started in my young career in the prison, seeing 18-year-olds that was in prison at 18. I mean, you just got out of high school and you're already in prison. Decisions that were made to be whatever friend you were around, whatever you went to done, the people you associated with, the actions that you took, the decisions that were made. That impacts our lives. I made a decision to run for office. That's why I'm sitting here. I could have made that choice not to. But we throw these big rocks and little rocks into this pond of life, and the ripple effect's eventually going to come around to somebody. And I believe if we'll think about the fact that every decision we make every day is going to affect someone around us, affect us, and that effect may not be felt for 5 years. It may not be felt for 10 years. It may not be felt for 20. And I believe it depends on whatever decision that you make. But I think if we would think about that before we start, it would really help a lot of things from becoming out of hand, or it could even stop a lot of heartache for the person or for their families or for other people in the communities. The decisions that we make impact so many, whether it's small or large. And the bigger the decision, the more of the impact.
Well, one final question before we wrap it up. What's the meaning to all this, the meaning to life?
And this is the big doozy of the evening. Well, we always like to see people's interpretation of that answer, because it's a very broad answer, a broad question.
What is the meaning to life?
Yeah.
Well, I could try to give you that in two different versions, I guess, from my opinion. If you want to give you the elected official answer, or the Kevin Kemp I'm not the sheriff answer.
Maybe both.
I don't know that I can separate the two on this. I don't know if I can separate the two though. I think the answer's still the same for me though. I'm just going to answer who Kevin Kemp is.
Okay.
To me, the meaning of life is to serve others, to represent God in everything that we do. That's what it is to me. It's not about self to me. It's about making others around you feel loved, cared for, and to never bring harm to the kingdom of God. And to represent Him in everything that I do. That's my meaning for life.
Well, Mr. Kemp, we would like to thank you for coming on today.
Oh, it's my pleasure,
been an honor
guys.
to have you on. It's been an honor. My name is Jeffrey Watson,
And I'm Ethan Edwards.
and this is the Ridge Podcast.
You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Pandora, iHeartRadio, YouTube, Instagram, and as well as your favorite podcasting app. Our email is thewigspodcast@gmail.com, and our website is thewigspodcast.com.
If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out.
Thank you.